Hey, welcome to another edition of Leadership Lessons, though these are leadership lessons focused on development this semester. So we're real excited with our guest. I hope all of you are getting your work in. Things are looking good right now at the beginning of the semester. But our second guest of the semester is Debra Lackey. And Debra has been a long-time colleague of mine. I've known you for a long time, Debra.
Sure have.
And you've worked at a number of development places. You've been the big cheese in development at many places. Your most recent, before this one, you were at the zoo.
I was at the Houston Zoo as Vice President of Development with Capital Campaign.
And then now you're at Memorial Hermann.
Senior Development Director.
And how do you like Memorial Hermann? How long have you been at Memorial Hermann now?
Just about 3 years.
Oh, so you've been there a little bit.
I love it. It's my first entree into healthcare.
Yeah.
I've got a resume that really kind of goes the gamut in terms of different kinds of organizations.
A lot of education.
A lot of education, a little bit of arts, community college, social service, March of Dimes. Put in my time with all of them, and I always wanted to do healthcare, and it's extremely rewarding.
Is a big question that I know people will have is it any easier anywhere else? I mean, healthcare, people might think, oh, healthcare must be an easier way to fundraise. Is it any easier in healthcare than it would be in any other area?
You know, when I interviewed for my position, the CEO of the Memorial Hermann Foundation said to me, you've got a good resume, you've done a lot of things, but I don't think you understand healthcare fundraising is difficult, and it's different. And I thought to myself, how could it be different? I've done all these different, I've gone into various, but it is different. It is more challenging because you work with a variety of different types of people. You work with grateful patients, you work with doctors helping them fund research, you work with hospital administrators in terms of what the hospitals need. You've kind of got to cross over a variety of paths and be one thing to all people. And you also have to learn things. For example, my first assignment was neuroscience. Hello, I knew nothing about neuroscience. And I work very closely for the last couple of years with a fellow who is over gastroenterology, and now I'm with transplant. None of that I would have ever thought going into this. So it's interesting. I like it.
Yeah. Do you have a certain amount of money you're supposed to raise every year?
Yes, we're assigned goals. Every organization I've worked for, some organizations I've been it.
Yeah.
So with it, I knew how much we had to raise to keep the lights on.
Right.
When you're in a larger organization like Memorial Hermann, the lights are on. I'm not raising operating money to keep the lights on at Memorial Hermann. I'm raising money for pockets of excellence.
Yeah.
So each of us has a set of dollar goals, cultivation goals, solicitation goals, stewardship goals, and so forth.
So what, in general, whatever you can tell us about dollar goals, in terms of most organizations, most hospitals, if I go to work in development at a hospital, at a Texas Children's or an MD Anderson or Memorial Hermann, about what will they say is how much money do I need to raise every time?
Well, I think it depends on the experience you bring to the table. And it depends on the budget. Our budget is approximately $25 million, the foundation's budget. I'm charged with raising $3 million a year.
Right. So they say, Debbie Lackey, you have to raise $3 million a year.
Right.
And if you do more than that, well, maybe we'll give you a raise. If you do less than that, you might have to look for another job.
Thankfully, they don't say it quite like that, but you are always challenged to get there.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. I'm not even halfway. I'm close to halfway, but I'm not halfway, and I only have 6 months left. But you know, there are factors that feed into it, and everybody's very cognizant of that. You cannot control what Bob Sanborn's going to give me.
Yeah.
I can say, I hope Bob Sanborn does this, but Bob may change his mind.
Right.
So you have to have enough prospects in the pipeline and have cultivated them enough to be able to indicate how your asks are going to go. I put together a list today, actually, of maybe 7, 8 to over 5 million. Now,
and you know what they have the capacity to give.
Correct.
Yeah.
And all of these 5 will not, all these 8 will not give that money. So, for example, let's say I put in ABC is going to give me $1 million, then I have an expected amount. And the expected amount is what realistic. Be very realistic as to what you're going to get. So that's how we do it.
So many people who've worked in development for children at risk have taken classes through continuing studies, and you have taught them. You've done a class on development. If you were writing a book today, Debbie, on development, what are some of the key factors or some of the key chapters that you might talk about in regards?
This is where the cheat sheet comes in handy, because this is on here. The first thing I wrote was listen. Everybody gets excited and involved and wants to give their speech and get out there and say whatever it is. My preference would be that one says what you want and then stop. It's amazing what you learn when you listen. And sometimes you go in for X and they're not interested in X, and you might find out they want to do Y. Sometimes you go in and once you listen, you realize they don't want to support you at all, but they're kind enough to listen to you. So I think that listening and hearing what the individual is geared for says a whole volume. Plus, everybody likes to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And if you go in and listen to them...
Present company excluded.
Of course not. You never talk about yourself.
Yeah.
And myself. But that would be the first thing. Do your homework.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of times people have gone in and speak to people and or a company, and they haven't got a clue what the company supports. And it becomes pretty apparent early on with the person you're talking with that you didn't do
That's
any
a big
homework.
mistake that a lot of fundraisers make.
All
I
the
see
time.
that all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And the other is, just because somebody gives money, why would they give it to you? And there's another thing. People say, and I'll use examples, Chevron, Exxon, Shell, Bank of America.
They give lots of money.
I'm going to call them. Well, you may not fit their criteria. Herein lies do your homework. I also think it helps to have an in. Find a door opener for wherever you're going.
Know someone in there.
Yeah, find it, work on it. They're there. You just got to dig for that. Be donor-centered. Again, a lot of that is listening.
Talk about what being donor-centered is.
It's all about the donor. We, in fundraising, just like anything, your product is the best. If you're in sales, your product is the best, and you're trying to sell your product. Well, in my case, Memorial Hermann's a fabulous institution, but I am not naive enough to not think that Texas Children's is not a fabulous institution, and MD Anderson is not a fabulous
There are a number of fabulous institutions.
And Rice, U of H, HBU, they're all great institutions. So why would the donor want to give you money? You should be concentrated on what the donor wants and how the donor wants to give and what the program is the donor wants to support, and then follow that donor, take care of that donor, steward that donor. Don't make it about
Another
you.
big mistake, not stewarding those donors.
I had a conversation with someone today, exactly the same thing, interviewing for a position, and it is in stewardship. And I said that's, I think, the number one thing that we put the least amount of emphasis on, because it is not a money-generating position. It's taking care of the people, and the better you take care of them, they'll give again. But it doesn't produce the income.
You don't see it right away. Yeah.
So that's a little different. And then thank you. That sounds pretty silly and pretty simple, but you know what?
How do you do your thank yous?
Well, obviously the first thing you do is a letter. That's a given. Quickly too, not too long after the gift comes in. But then in some cases I make phone calls.
Yeah.
Which again...
Now we have a policy at Children at Risk. For every check that we get, someone is called.
That is fabulous, because we get so busy that we don't.
Yeah.
And it's almost like people think, well, come on, they're busy people.
Yeah.
But I know on my end, when I've been home at night and I get somebody from my university just calling to say thanking me, I'm like,
it's pretty
okay.
nice.
And I've had those phone calls or made those phone calls where people go, why are you calling? What do you want? And I say, nothing. I just want to say thank you. And that is... They're astounded, and sometimes then they start talking, and that's what you want. It's all about relationships. So if you can connect that relationship, you've got it, and then you work that relationship. And I think another thing is, as development officers, we're just the facilitator. The donor wants to be with, in my case, a doctor or a physician or administrator or a programmer or a researcher at the hospital. It's not me. And so my role is to get them there and to tell that person on my end, you need to now be taking care of them too, and this is how.
And you facilitate that. You
Yeah,
make sure that
I
happens.
constantly say
because they
things.
don't necessarily understand
No,
the
and
whole
they're
idea
busy.
of stewardship.
They're
Yeah.
busy. So you got to do that. You got to
Yeah.
keep that going.
You know, one of the things that we do at Children at Risk, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that we don't do well, but in terms of the thank you part, holiday time, we always do like a little bag of cookies or some sort of candy. Nothing too expensive, because I think donors don't like expensive
No,
things.
they don't.
But the idea that you took the time and we deliver it to people are always talking about that.
Well,
because it's just a matter of, I think they like the thank you.
And in some organizations you have, and this is 2 organizations that I've been with, that people can tour. When I was at the zoo, obviously, people can tour. At the hospital, we do the same thing. We find an interest and then we take them to the area at the hospital. Just the littlest, tiniest thing that you give people, they are so surprised and so happy, and it's not considered something they're going to throw away. They're almost astounded that you thought to give them something. Just something simple, something little. I do think they don't want to get overloaded with paper.
Yeah.
I see people come with, books of stuff, and I think, oh my God, that's going to kill them. And like me, they probably put it over here, and then they don't look at it.
There's no tour like that zoo tour, though.
Oh yeah, well,
I've done that zoo donor tour. It's just
that's,
amazing.
That was pretty cool.
You go in the little card, the back of the scenes.
You can't.
You can't replicate that anywhere
Animals
else, really.
and children. I mean, that's it. I actually heard on something the other day, because I listen to a lot of webinars, that a children's hospital in another part of the country, what they did with their tours is they had donors come in and children took them around.
Wow.
And I went, oh my God. I mean, this is perfect, because they're in love with children. That's why they want to help the children. So, and they do it in schools
I
too.
visited a school here, the Cinquapin School.
Yeah.
I don't know if and when you go to the Cinquapin School, every student comes up to you and says, "Welcome to the Cinquapin School."
Yeah.
That's very powerful as well.
Yeah.
So there's little things that people can do. Tell me how you got into development, Debbie. I mean, you didn't grow up as a 3 or 4-year-old saying, "I want to raise money." I mean, how did that happen for you? Because you grew up in Wisconsin, right?
Chicago. Went to school in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Actually, I grew up with a mother that was a volunteer, consummate volunteer, and started me out Girl Scouts. Then I was cheer-aide at a hospital, or Candy Striper. I don't even know if they still have them anymore. I was involved in a variety of things. Then I moved here and I went to work for a for-profit company, and I got involved with a business women's association and moved up and on that board served. Blah, blah, blah. Then I joined the Downtown Y at the same time, got involved with them and got on their volunteer board, and was doing, it's volunteer driven, the campaigns and things like that. So got involved with that and led a capital but a big campaign at the Y.
Yeah.
So in my private life, I was basically fundraising, but I didn't really realize it. And then I was in a downsizing at the company and had no earthly idea what I was going to do. And a friend of mine said, what do you like to do?
Yeah.
And I told her what I like to do, and she said, well, why aren't you doing this for a living? And I went, huh? And I was and I think this is a lot of life, I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And somebody introduced me to somebody, and that's how I got started.
Wow. Wow.
And
what was your first job? Tell me about your first
fundraising
job.
I worked for the March of Dimes. I was a development director, but I'm going to tell you, at the March of Dimes, which I'm sure is still the case, it's all hands on deck. I drove, for Walk America, I drove big rental trucks. I had one at Walk America at 4 a.m. I was putting out barricades, parking the truck, jumping up on the back of the truck, getting it out, schlopping cases of Pepsi. I mean, we did it all. And that's one of the things I think people in development need to know. And some people call it paying dues.
Yeah.
I think one needs to experience it all.
Yeah.
One needs to be all things to all people. They need to do events, they need to do an annual fund, they need to do major gifts, they need to have their finger in a capital campaign. You need to have, and then decide what is it you really like to do.
Right.
But once you've done all those things, you have a better appreciation and a better respect for the people you work with who continue to do those things. I mean, there are people that love events. I don't love to do events.
But there are people who love putting on big events.
They love
Yeah,
to do that.
absolutely,
But it is hard work.
Yeah.
And I have such an appreciation now for what goes into it and the detail and the precision and the complexity that they handle with just a wave of the hand. So yeah.
And how long were you at March of Dimes?
I was there 7 years.
Wow.
Seven and a half.
So you moved up within the organization there?
Yeah, and then I was very fortunate to always be recruited.
Yeah.
So I did.
So headhunters or
yeah,
executive recruiters would call you?
And the second one was to an arts organization, which I was only at for 18 months. There was a nonprofit component to it, but there was the world of rock and roll. And I thought this would be, wow, I'm still young, this is great. And it was, but it just wasn't me. It wasn't the right fit for me. I loved every minute of it. But then I got recruited for the community college from a board member from that organization that was community college. I was there for another 7 years. Then
you raised a lot of money for that.
Yeah, I did. That was, and people.
What was it? Lone Star?
Yeah. People have asked me what was the best, if I had anything to pick, and I love Memorial Hermann, but I really enjoyed the community college. I left it because I live in Houston, and I was driving 90 miles round trip daily.
Too much.
I just couldn't keep that commute going. So that's what I left. And then I went to a small nonprofit where I realized at this point, I'm not a person that can work in a shop of one. I need to bounce ideas off of you.
Yeah.
I need that communication. I need a lot of brain thought. And so somebody called me and said, the zoo's looking for somebody. Are you interested? I said, yeah. And so.
How long were you at the zoo?
3.5 years.
Wow, you were there quite a while. And then you went to Memorial Hermann.
Memorial Hermann.
Wow.
So it's all been very interesting.
Yeah. When you look at the different types of development, and you mentioned them briefly, the events and the major gifts and
annual fund
and capital campaign. When you look at corporate giving, foundation giving, when you look at all of those types of things, are there easier sort of entry-level ways for people to get into? If you're a student in the class and you're thinking, okay, well, development might be the way that I want to go, or at least I want to learn about development, what's a good entry-level way to go?
Well, yeah, the capital campaign demands experience just because of the complexity, and you're jumping right into major donor level things.
And capital campaign is when you're about to build a big building or something of
technically a capital campaign is a campaign that has a beginning and an end. So it could be an endowment campaign for scholarships, for a university, for a program. It can be bricks and mortar. It can be a professor. It can be whatever you design it to be, but it has a beginning and it has an end date. And it's got a definite goal, and over a period of time, you reach it and you're done. And then perhaps, most people finish one, start another.
Yeah.
But again, that takes people don't hire people to say, run my capital campaign or take this over with no experience. I would say probably the entry level would be, and this is a broad category and it covers a lot of things, but it would be annual fund.
Yeah.
Because that involves direct mail, online, social media. There's a fourth element to it. I'm trying to think, because I've just now, that responsibility is coming over to me to handle that at my end. But that's more elementary. You're requesting lower amounts, and the purpose of an annual fund is to, 1, get your word out, 2, get donors to give to you, but 3, to form a pipeline for those smaller donors who give to you over time, move them to the next level, so that it becomes a pipeline to your next, whatever you're going to call it, maybe it's your major gift officer, to take these donors and find out, are they interested in hearing more and making larger gifts? And then you qualify them to that, and either they are, or you throw them back into the pool. So I would say annual fund, and it kind of covers it. Events is definitely an entry level. Everybody needs help on a low level, first time employee. I mean, again, it's a lot of grunt work, but they're there day of. They're meeting people. It's interaction with people.
And it can be exciting.
It is, and it's thrilling that evening or day, and then it's over, and everybody's excited, and you raised a lot of money, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And then the planning kind of starts again for the next one all over again.
Right.
So it's more. I call it a younger person's kind of dynamic because it moves really fast, and it can be more exciting and more fun for them. So that's what I would say.
When you look around town and you see all the organizations, all the nonprofits that are out there trying to raise money, and I do this, I'll look around and I'll think, well, there are organizations that could be raising a lot more money. Do you see that as well? Organizations that seem to have a lot of potential to raise a lot of money?
Yeah. I mean, one thing about Houston, and this is said periodically, but this is a town that's incredible. And I come from the city of Chicago, which I think is incredible. But this town, I think, per person, has more interest in helping other people than most communities I've ever been aware of.
Yeah.
So there's a vast number of people, companies, and so forth that can give. I think if there would be one thing in this community, there is potential for a lot of people to raise money, but I think there are many people that are doing the same thing. And I think if they combined resources, now it may not be that they just serve this population. They may have to expand the population they serve. But I think if they combined resources and talent and boards, they could do that and do it better and raise more money to help the people they are.
Well, we saw one example of that in recent years of End Hunger merging with the Houston Food Bank. And now they're just like all over the place. And really one of the most successful food banks in America.
Yeah,
because they really did that.
They realized it. But there's politics. There's job security.
There's boards.
There's boards. I don't want to quit. No, I don't like them. No, they're not going to play nice in the sandbox. But if you have really keen leadership and people who know what's best, they get it done.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is.
You see that with a lot of children's organizations. There are a lot of children's organizations that seemingly are ready, that could be good for merging.
And I will frankly tell you that I meet people all the time and they'll say, I'm something, something child, or child something, something. And I'll say, what is it you do? And what is it that organization does? Because they all blend into the next after a while.
Right. Yeah.
So I think people have the best of intentions, but I think if we could combine some of what we do, they could raise a lot more money and help more people by doing it.
Yeah. Tell me who you think some of the best fundraising organizations and fundraisers are in town. When you look around and you see what's going on.
I wrote this one down here because I didn't want to. And now
you want to forget.
Well, it's not that I don't want to forget. I don't want to insult anybody.
Of course.
I think first of all, there's some that are on the top. Museum of Fine Arts. When they do something, it's millions.
Yeah.
Rice just finished $1 billion. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that's done $1 billion. This is my first. You did. And then I talked to them to say, okay, so tell me a little bit about it. And their, we'll call it their campaign cabinet. That little group gave $50 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's mind-boggling what they did. I think Museum of Natural Science is great. I think Neighborhood Centers does a fabulous job. Yep. I think there are and forgive me for saying this, but I'll call it the illness of the month. March of Dimes, Heart Association, Cancer Association, of which there are many now. Then there's the lung, leukemia. There's so many that are national organizations that have local chapters here. They all have their own little niche. I think they do a good job. Those organizations, though, are great, and they are great training grounds for new people. They're very event-driven.
Yes,
they're very event-driven.
A lot of events at those places.
And really, if there was any place where I would tell young people to go, it might be there, because you do get a little bit of a lot of different things to do.
The Houston office for many of those groups is also the highest performing office in the country.
Oh, definitely.
Which is sort of interesting.
I mean, I believe the MS 150, the Houston ride, which wasn't 10 years ago, is now the largest ride. Walk America at one point here was the largest walk for March of Dimes in the United States. And when you think about it, same with MS, you're competing with San Francisco, LA, New York, Chicago, Miami. You would assume that they would have larger events, but no. So it is a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Talk about salaries for development people. One of the interesting things about fundraising is that over time, the salaries for fundraisers can get pretty high, right?
We got some people in town making a lot of money.
Yeah, so talk about sort of entry level and then higher level salaries.
Interesting that you asked that question, because just yesterday I had a conversation about a young woman who graduated from school last May, is working in HR, and not happy and thinking, I think I want to do development. Well, she told me what her salary was, and I said, good luck. And I think it's 50. And I said, well, you're not going to make 50. And she said, sure I will. And I said, no. I would say your typical starting salary is 32 to 40 in that range.
Yeah, we'll start people at 30 many times.
Yeah. And you can prove yourself and you can move up.
And you can do that pretty quickly.
And, entry level people, the good thing and bad thing about some of these people is you're getting great experience, but then they're hungry and they want more. And some organizations can't pay the salary. So somebody else comes along who says, do you want to make 45? Sure, I want to make 45. So off they go. Executive directors are in the, over the 100 range. The top shops, they're in the 250 to almost 400. Some people in town. So
if we talked about some of the top fundraisers, RISE, the Museum of Fine Arts, Texas Children's, I'd put up there.
Right.
What do you think the director of development's, the head development person is getting at those places?
I'd say 2+, maybe 3.
Two or three.
Probably 3.
Yeah.
And they've got bonus structures
maybe more.
and and they've got packages that are very.
Yeah.
You can find it out if they're interested. Just look at the 990s.
It's very talk about that very
well.
Quickly.
The 990.
The income tax reform.
So everybody has to file a 990, and I use 990s not so much to check out people's salaries, but I will go to small foundations, family foundations, whatever, and that's some of the homework you do. You look at the 990 and see what they support. And if you have no connection to them and they support things like you, it will also give you an idea of how much. Because the last thing somebody wants is to go in and say, I want money, but how much should I apply for? They'll kind of go, see ya. You've got to know that ahead of time. So that's a way to do it. But they also list the top salaries of, I think it's four or five of the top five.
Yeah.
And so
if they're over 50,000.
Yeah, and it's about a year to two lag. So you're looking at this year. You'd probably be looking at 2012.
Yeah, and that's a good way to see those salaries.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the importance of the board of directors in terms of fundraising for organizations small and large.
Well, I would say, first of all, it doesn't matter. The board of directors is paramount. On a small scale, with a smaller organization, the development person has a lot more contact with them. And it doesn't matter what level really you are, because it's a small group. They are involved in all aspects of running your organization. So typically they're showing up at all your events. They're involved in any kind of campaign you're doing, even if it's a major gift campaign. And so there's a lot of door opening done by them and friends that they're bringing in to it, and the development people are privy to that. I can tell you that I do not attend the Memorial Hermann Foundation board meetings. The CEO and the key exec does. I'm third down in that rank. And so consequently, I know many of these people because I have met them, or I am at tours with the hospital with other people and I get involved with them, but there's some that I have never met. So doors are open, and occasionally somebody says to me, you need to call Mr. So-and-so and introduce yourself and say whatever, but that's what it is. And Mr. So-and-so is interested in helping, and so he picks up the phone and helps you. But that's how it works.
So I want to ask you, we have students that have been tweeting in questions. And
I don't know how to tweet.
We've had enough. You need to get on.
I know.
It's a big old deal.
I know.
So, and feel free to continue to tweet in some of your questions. And I'm going to try to get to quite a few of them because there's so many good ones. Jennifer Tomasek, I'm going to start with her. She wanted to know about with healthcare, so this is healthcare related, with escalating healthcare costs, are stakeholders demanding more transparency of costs and quality of care? She also wants to know, within a physician community, what are some of the real challenges around fundraising?
Well, interesting that she mentioned safety and quality. That's the thing that the hospitals, that's the number one. Because if you have a safe environment and you got quality, you're saving lives. People die, unfortunately, by mistakes occasionally. So that is a key factor. And interestingly enough, corporations are interested in talking to hospitals because that's what a corporation is all about, is safety and quality within that arena. Working in the climate of healthcare today, I've had one or two individuals say to me, we're not sure what's going to happen, so we're not going to do anything right now. We like you, but you know what? We're just going to sit tight. And there's nothing you can do to change that. Right. You've just got to say, okay. Sit tight. In terms of physicians, I've had a couple very candid conversations with a couple of them who are older, who have seen it all, who are now taking Medicare, who years past maybe didn't have to take Medicare, are not happy perhaps with the payments they're receiving. And they don't see their future as they saw their future when they were young physicians starting out.
Is there a bitterness there because of that?
Occasionally, and what you do find in those, they go into strictly private practice. And they just want to do the 9-to-5 job. The guys and girls that are men and women that I work with are UT, Memorial is aligned with UT Health. So they are very research savvy, and that's what they want to do. They want to prevent this from happening to the next guy. They want to find cures, different methods, different drugs that will help people get well. So I work with I would say, a different level of physician than the physician that's in private practice.
Marta Alvarenga has a great question. She said, you recently completed a $50 million capital campaign.
Correct.
And she wants to know, what was the biggest challenge and how did you overcome it within that campaign?
Oh my God, Ike. Wasn't it Ike?
Hurricane Ike?
Ike.
Yeah,
Ike. Oh, it was awful. We had a challenge grant, and we had until October, let me think, it was October 30th to raise the money. And we were $2 million, $2 to $3 million away. Maybe it was 4, I can't recall now the exact number. But in any event, the hurricane hit. And it was September 13th, I think. I can't remember the exact date. So I called the company, the foundation that was giving us the challenge grant, and I said, I can't call these people in town and go, excuse me, I only have 60 days, I need your money. I mean, everybody was devastated. All these people, all these things happening, people talking about New Orleans, everything was going on everywhere. And so I said, I need more time. And they said, we'll give you 1 month. That was it. It was September 30th. And they said, we'll give you 1 month. And I was like, okay. And I mean...
Did you do it in a month?
I did it in a month. Wow. But I'm telling you, that was like you were pulling up every stone and looking underneath the rock.
It's interesting. Ike sort of, when you have a big disaster like that, certainly in town, but even close to us, it sucks a lot of the money out of the system,
I mean,
doesn't
people were helping out people who were homeless.
Yeah, and who can blame them, frankly,
no,
right?
I mean, it was all perfect. And then I'm going, we'd like to build an African forest, and it's like, are you kidding me? So it was difficult, but people realized, and I think that's the other thing about the human being. When the chips are down, it's amazing how if they've got the resources, they're going to help you. It's just then thinking straight and figuring out who you can go to get it.
Sharhonda Cox, one of the students, wonders, in regards to that same $50 million campaign, how did you prepare and delegate duties, your staff? How did you sort of delegate that?
Well, that was pretty much me and the head of the campaign, who was a volunteer, is a very successful businessman in town. And this campaign was interesting. The man that got involved with the campaign when it started was Mr. Onstead, and he died within I think 4 months.
The founder of Randall's.
Yeah, he died within 4 months. And so here's this major thing that they had all everybody wanted to do. He was gung-ho and he passed away. So a board member stepped up and said, well, I'll help. This was not his forte, but he stepped in and did it. It was pretty much getting together a group of people. The board were all involved. We had other volunteers who weren't board members who we tapped to be on this committee. Then you identified lists of people, and everybody had to go out, and you just kept on them. You said you were going to call so-and-so. Have you called so-and-so? We need to bring them in. We need to talk about this, this, this. So that was it. Staff was more doing. They were helping write proposals that went to foundations and to some corporations. That was their role. But pretty much the face of it was me with them.
And of the $50 million, tell me how much of that came from foundations and corporate as opposed to individuals?
Not as much came from corporate as you would imagine. I probably would say, it's been 3.5 years, so forgive me. But about? I would say a large chunk of it came from foundations, Houston Endowment Brown Foundation.
Like 20%?
Yeah, probably 20. Yeah, 20. And a large chunk came from people, individuals. Corporations was the smallest amount.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot of wealthy individuals.
And you know what? At Memorial Hermann, I'm just at the end of the 100 million neuroscience, same thing.
Yeah.
Foundations, big chunk, very little corporate money, and individuals.
So is the answer to the question, how do I raise big money, you have to have individuals with big wealth? You start with that?
I don't know that you need the wealth, but you need the influence of them being able to go into that they've got the connections.
With those people.
With those people. So in many cases, I remember another friend of mine is with another nonprofit, and the woman isn't wealthy. I mean, she's well off, but she's not wealthy. And but she's so highly respected in the environmental world that she can open doors to people who do have that, the corporate people, the individuals with that wealth, to listen to the story.
Yeah.
So it takes all kinds to make it work. It's not just people with money. So there are some people that can give you a lot of expertise and not dollars, and that's invaluable as well.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of those connections, right? Richard Kendall wants to know, what's the value of fundraising events versus, say, a traditional fund drive?
Well, even though fundraising events are very time-consuming, they do something that a fund drive can't do, and that's exposure. New people that would never hear about you. If you have an event and I buy a table and I invite 8 people to sit at my table, chances are those 8 people don't know you. Now, I'm not saying that those 8 people are going to support you, but if even one turns around out of the 10 and makes a gift, you've now built and you've got a momentum going. So I think you can build on an event in terms of your exposure to the community.
What are some of the great fundraising events in town? Well, you mentioned the MS 150, which is multiple sclerosis, big bike ride to Austin.
It's funny. There's 2 seasons, which you probably know. Yeah. There's the fall and the spring. And anybody who's big who has galas, that's it. In fact, when you plan a gala, you're checking out to make sure you're not on anybody else's. And if they haven't, you call them and say, what's the date you're thinking about?
Right.
You don't want to overlap because that will kill somebody.
And a gala is going to be a big
party.
Nighttime deal, big party.
And the best galas are no talking. The best galas are the parties. If you throw a good party, people come back to the party, just like anybody. It's human nature. When you throw a party that it's all talking, it's boring and they leave and they don't want to come back. So I think all the arts organizations, again, I think the health and welfare organizations like the March of Dimes, the Heart Association, universities don't so much. Theirs are more more alumni-oriented, around kind of campaigns, so they kind of stick away from that stuff. They have more local things, like Shepherd School of Music may have their gala or something like that. So all of them. I mean, some are phenomenal. I'll tell you the one that I've never been to, but I hear lots of every year because I have friends who are involved, is Victory, and it's the Cattle Barons.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that raises a ton of money. Everybody goes in jeans. They have a blast.
People like that.
They blow a lot of money. There's a lot of people with a lot of wealth that go to that, but there are people with no money that go to that. So it's at, where's it, George Ranch, I think.
Yeah.
So it's more of a laid-back kind of thing.
Things like the AIDS Walk, which is sort of an interesting thing where you don't even have to have pay to get in, but it raises so much money because people volunteer.
And
sort of interesting.
And I think there's the things that are emotional appeals. I mean, when I think back to Susan Komen, when it first came here, I went to it and I was crying while I was walking because there's people who are wearing shirts of this was my mother, this was my grandmother, I'm walking from my aunt, my sister, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's very, and it makes you want to do it. It makes you want to go back and support them.
Yeah. Unsuccessful fundraising events, we've been part of many of those.
Well,
there used to be this big golf tournament in town that was advertised on TV all the time.
Well, things run their course too.
And I remember asking how much it raised net, and it was like $15,000.
Well,
it was just
and
amazing.
people, that's the one thing people don't. A lot of people aren't really honest about that.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, the cost to put some of this stuff on. You go to the Hilton Americas, which is at this moment in time the largest place you can have something in town. You're talking 50, 60 grand right off the bat. That's your dinner and your alcohol, and you got this and you got that. So events are extremely expensive. And the other thing is events run their course. There's a few, like at the March of Dimes, the Best Dressed Luncheon. I don't know, this must be the 40th or maybe going near 50. Extremely successful. But in other things, they come, they go. I mean, you gotta move with it. And if a golf tournament's passe, I'll tell you something that apparently is now the big thing is clay shoots.
Right, I see a lot of those.
Oh my God. And they're not expensive to do. And they go out, they have fun, and that's it. And they can raise, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, just like that.
Really nice. Amy Cole Guzman wonders about percentage of your current annual budget or what you have to raise that is private foundation grants. Is that something that applies to your job?
I do a small amount of foundations. We have a woman on our staff who's really been doing it from days past. So she has those relationships with many of them. She knows how to write proposals, close her eyes, she can do it. So predominantly that goes to her. I have some connections with some foundations, and so with those I do it. So it's not, my portfolio is more individuals.
So in the average nonprofit in town, what percentage, and this is a very hard question because it's different, but what percentage of those budgets do you think come from foundations? If they've been around a while, not a brand new foundation.
I'm telling you, I think probably 30, 40%.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe even a tad higher. The corporate giving is where it's more of a marketing. They give where, they want people to see their name.
Yeah.
And it's not people go, oh, we've got this great event tonight. Well, why would I give you $25,000 for 4 hours? I want to invest my money, if I was a good guy at a corporation, to see long, give me, and we have to think more creatively like that.
Yeah.
How can we give you more exposure for what you want to give us? Again, donor-centered. What is it you want, not what is it I want?
Right. Amy Rogers wants to know about AFP. So
my passion.
How did you become involved in that? And tell us a little bit about that.
I can't say enough good things about that. I just finished being president.
So AFP is the
Association of Fundraising Professionals. When I got into fundraising, somebody I met, and this was again talking to people, they said, have you ever heard of AFP? And I said, no. And they said, okay, it's at the Doctors Club, you need to go. So I found it, I went, I knew no one. I was sat down at a table, and this girl says to me, who are you? And at that time, the new people stood up. I stood up, and this is the Doctors Club, which the building doesn't even exist anymore. Yeah. And they said, she said to me, so what do you do? And I said, well, this is my first time, I don't know anything. And she said, okay, I'm chair of the membership committee, you're on my committee. And I went, okay. And from there, I met so-and-so, 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 and so-and-so. And I have the best stories, people who have now gone way up the ranks. And I was at our AFP lunch Friday. The two people on the stage were award winners this past year at National Philanthropy Day, and we asked them to talk about their careers. Room was packed, and it wasn't planned, and each one said, one of the first people I met was Debra Lackey.
Oh, wow.
And I was very touched. Well, that was a good thing and a bad thing.
Who are the two people?
Kevin Foyle, who's now the Vice President of Development at UT Health, and Cynthia Riley, who's the Vice President of Development at University of St. Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
And And it kind of made me feel a tad old. And then I kind of joked and said, well, Debbie Lackey's everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
But then afterwards, all these people swarmed me like I had a magic bullet, and I didn't. But it was very nice. It was very nice. So
Very nice.
AFP, it introduces you to fundraising. We have classes through Rice University. We put on educational sessions that are CFRE, which is a certified fundraising professional. It's a certification one can apply for, and I am. It's the best of the best. And I'll give a plug. February 7th is Ask the Experts, and it's an Intercontinental. Go to the AFP Houston website and you can register. And it's a day of experts talking about annual fund, talking about careers. And
I've been to it many times. It's fantastic.
It's just a way to get your name out and mingle.
Yeah, yeah. And really, in many ways, the AFP website has jobs as well.
We have job
In
site.
many ways, breaking into the nonprofit world, if you want to work for large organizations or medium-sized organizations, AFP and development is a great way to do it.
And, one of the things about us, we want to help. We've all been there. Every single solitary one of us has been there. And so when somebody calls me and says, Debbie, would you do me a favor and would you talk to Bob Sanborn? He's interested. I go, sure, give him my number.
Yeah.
And you call me and I can instantly tell, Bob, really what you're trying to get at, this isn't who we are, but you know who is? I want you to call so-and-so. And I did that just the other day for another friend of mine. I said, okay. She said, I want you to talk to this young woman. I said, you know what? I'm not the right person for her. So-and-so is. I called her last night. She said, give her my cell. And everybody wants to help everybody.
Wow.
And it's good.
Monica Sines has a question. How large should a development staff be?
Oh, well, the one-person development shop will tell you they need 5 people. The 5 people will tell you they need 10. I'm now at 18. We need 25. So you know what? You never have enough money. You never have enough clothing. You never have enough food. You always want more. But it's funny. You can do what you got with, and you make do with what you've got. So
There are a lot of one-person development shops.
oh, many more than just, it's the executive director, the finance person, maybe a membership person if they even have that, or it's usually a program person and a development person, and that's it. And everybody's got their hands helping one another.
Yeah.
That's learning, really good learning, and a great education, but it's a lot of hard work and a lot of long days.
Last week's speaker talked about the importance of the leader of the organization in terms of fundraising. How important is it for you, for the CEO or other senior leadership at Memorial Hermann or at the zoo previous to that, to be involved in fundraising?
It's paramount because, again, I can ask you for money, but your interest is in what Dr. So-and-so did, or what Professor so-and-so is doing, or what Dean so-and-so is doing, or what the head of the zoo is doing, or you want to hear vision. You want to talk to the person who's got that vision, who's building that organization, or is serving the city. You want to hear about the problems. And that person is in it. They know it. So the head of the organization, and I know there are people who work for people that their people can't raise money.
Right.
Well, okay, don't ask them to raise money. Bring them along just to talk about what they're good at.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just the vision of the organization. You know what? They're going to sell. You can close it. The development person can close it.
Well, let me ask you, because we're nearing sort of our final time, but a couple more questions I wanted to ask. In small or startup organizations, this is Raquel Ramos. She wants to know, if you're just getting started, how do you begin to raise money? Are there easier ways to begin to raise money?
Startup organizations are hard.
They're very hard.
My thought is that many should go to the United Way MAP program, which is the Management Assistance Program. It's inexpensive, sliding scale for people. They offer classes on everything. They are more than willing to help you. Ronnie Haggerty, who's on the AFP board, who's a fabulous person, she's headed the MAP program. I don't know that it may still fall under her, but they reach out to everybody in the community. They're very helpful. AFP offers scholarships to people to take the classes at Rice. AFP offers, by the way, scholarships to become members to AFP. Again, I think it's asking people for help and questions. I mean, you just don't walk in and it's sitting there and you go, light bulb, oh, annual fund, direct mail, I know what to do. Oh, how do I? you got to get help.
But there are a lot of resources in
Tons
town
of resources.
that are going to help you get started.
Right, exactly.
And I also say a community like Houston, once you have a good plan and maybe you have the beginning of some results, there are a number of foundations, medium and small,
that will help
start
you.
giving
They'll
you small
give you
grants.
money to get you started.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of what they call them, and it's slipping my mind. But yeah, they're just that, and that's what they want to do. They want to fund somebody. They want to. It's seed money. They want to give seed money to people. But the plan's got to show. Here's my money. Now, what are you going to do with it once my money goes away?
And the other thing, and you mentioned this earlier, that your organization is unique because you can't just say, well, I'm going to do what she's doing, but we're just a little bit better at it, because no one likes to hear that. They want to see what you're doing is completely unique from what anyone else is doing.
Okay, and I'm a hospital, so we've got everything at our hospital. Well, almost everything, not everything, but almost. Well, you know what? We're not great at everything. We're fabulous at some things. The same with MD Anderson. They're fabulous at some things. So I like to call it a pocket of excellence. Every organization has got at least one pocket of excellence that they do better than anybody else. And it may be that their pocket is in a specific community that nobody else is serving. That is something unique. Build on what's unique and what you've got that nobody else can do.
What's your pocket of excellence at Memorial Hermann?
I would say trauma.
Trauma.
Life flight.
Yeah.
We're the #1 and the busiest trauma center in the United States.
Isn't there a reality show filmed?
We're coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
It was supposed to start in January. TNT. General Motors is already going to do it, but it was amazing television. They got 2 shows that weren't coming on, and they were coming on. So it's sometime late spring, summer, and it's called Life Flight. And I've seen a trailer. It's not about the administrator of the hospital. It's literally you're there. You're walking through the whole thing. You're in the operating room. You're watching the trauma victim. I mean, some of it I'm like, oh, it's fabulous. It's fabulous.
I am buddies with Craig Cordola.
Oh, I love Craig.
Who's
Craig.
the CEO of
The
Memorial Hermann
Hermann
Texas Medical Center. And Craig is not an excitable guy.
No.
But when he talks about the reality show, he gets a little excited.
Oh my God,
which is
it's
sort
so
of
cool.
something.
And you know what? That Life Flight program, when you know that Dr. Duke, who lives in the hospital, who still you see walking around the
Dr. Red
hospital.
Duke.
Yes. Who is spry, he's in the operating room, he's walking around. When you know what his vision was in the 70s, and we were like, I think the first or second in the United States, and now to know that the U.S. Army wants to know what we're doing and brings in the Army to our hospital to stay for 2 weeks, to walk around and shadow everybody and takes our protocols and uses them. Our guys who are head of trauma, Dr. Holcomb, he's a retired colonel from the Army. He's been in Afghanistan, Iraq. I mean, it's fabulous. Interesting.
So a few final interesting questions just for our audience, just to get to know you a little bit better. Life-work balance for you and in the development field. Talk a little bit about that.
I'll be extremely honest. I have 2 children, 23 and 25 now.
Do they know you?
Not as well as I would have liked.
Wow.
Do they know my husband? Yes. I made a lot of sacrifices for my career in probably a very important time in their lives. And I wasn't there for the school plays, the whatevers. I would be late for the after-school stuff, or I couldn't get there at all. And I have told many people, as much as women say they can have it all, you can do it all, I don't believe that.
It's hard.
You
And there's
can
more
try.
pressure on a woman to do these things than a guy in many ways.
Yeah. You men, if a guy says I'm going to go, I'm Little League, the other guy goes, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
A woman, because the majority of development shops, a lot of it is female.
Yeah.
So it's very hard. You have to make a lot of sacrifices. And so I say, decide what it is you want to do and work for an organization that's going to accommodate what it is you want to do. You should be happy. Don't be unhappy, and don't find yourself in that position. I think there's a lot of people that would say that.
It's interesting because I've worked for different organizations. When I worked for universities, I'd be at one place where my daughter was welcome to be on campus with me, and then I moved to another place where they're like, "Why is your daughter here at an evening basketball game?"
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, well, it's just sort of an interesting.
Yeah.
Organizations can make a big difference. Tell me a little bit about your favorite restaurant, and what is your favorite restaurant in Houston?
Well, I wrote this down. I don't even have to look. My kitchen. My kitchen.
Your kitchen.
It's not called my kitchen.
You're
It is my
you're
kitchen.
an excellent cook, are
I
you,
love to
Debbie?
cook. I love
Yeah.
to cook. Some people run. I'm not a runner. When I'm in the kitchen, and I spend all afternoon usually on a Sunday, and my husband will say, "What the heck are you making?" And I'll say it, and he'll be like, "Well, you've been cooking for hours." To me, it's a release.
Yeah.
I like to create, so that's my creative
Do you have
outlet.
a favorite dish or type of cooking that you like, or just
No,
all over the place?
I will say that if you came to my house, literally, every time people come to my house, it's almost all new. I never give you the same thing twice, and that's why I like to figure.
I tease my wife about that. She always thinks she wants to do something brand new, and like, why are we doing something brand new?
And I will tell you, I had some people over about 2 weeks ago, and I realized I left out the sugar of the dessert. And I was in there and I went, oh my God. And this girl said, we can fix it, we can fix it. And my son walked in and he said, I'm not having any. I mean, so, there are disasters.
Yeah. What's your favorite sort of best kept secret spot in Houston venue?
Your wife now knows this. I am a shopaholic. But I'm not a shopaholic where I'm at Neiman Marcus. I am a resale shopaholic. And so I think there are more fun, interesting resale shops in this city, and finds and things, and I cannot tell you the number of times I will have something on and people will go, oh, I love that jacket. I joked one day, somebody said, everything you've got on, and I said, honest to God, if I walked down the street, somebody might say, I think I owned all that stuff. So
do you tell people that it's
yeah,
resale?
oh yeah. I have one favorite thing I bought in Chicago, and I think I'm going to wear it tomorrow. I bought a winter coat for $5.
Amazing.
And the woman said $5, and I said, well, I already have a coat on, but I can't afford not to buy a coat for $5. And I brought it home and I wear it, and I had it on, and somebody said, I love that coat. I said, it cost $5.
You're
I'm
proud
very
of it.
proud
Yeah,
of it. $5.
As well you should be. And finally, Debbie, when they make the Debbie Lackey story in Hollywood, who's going to play you in the movies? Who do you want to play you?
Well, okay, I had two thoughts on this. My first thought was, after I came up with the person, because I think I live a life similar to what she was on television, I don't think they know who she is, and that's Lucille Ball.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I could name so many different things where I'm like, oh my God, this was a Lucy episode.
Mm-hmm.
But since many people are younger, I would say, although I look absolutely nothing like her, so you got to close your eyes and nod, I think Kristen Wiig. Because
wow, yeah.
I've seen her be dramatic, I've seen her be funny, I've seen her be serious.
And she's a little quirky like you are.
Yes, she seems to have a great sense of humor whenever she's interviewed or wherever. She seems to take things on the cuff. She can be as sarcastic as can be. I like people like that.
Yeah,
I think if you can go through life with a sense of humor, you got it made.
Absolutely. And you have a great sense of humor.
I try to be funny. Yeah, that helps you too.
Debbie Lackey, thank you so much.
I enjoyed it. Good luck
wonderful
to everybody.
development
And
professional.
Anybody who wants, you can give them my phone number.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll post it on
happy
the
to
class
help
website.
people and lead them to the next
good.
area.
So thanks for being here with another episode here in the Leadership Studio, focusing on development with Debra Lackey. And we'll see you next week for another one. Until then, keep up the good work. See you soon.